Hey, how you doing? Hope you all are doing great. As you've seen in the thumbnail, in this video, we're going to see what if Banished Naruto sent to Legend of Zelda. This is part 1, and before getting into video, I request you to check the author of this fanfic and show some love and support. Name of the story is Legend of Naruto by Leaf Ranger. Do check it. All details in description. And if you want next part of this series, please leave a like, share, and consider subscribe. Let's get into the video. Also, check out Patreon for uncensored spicy content. Link in description. In one timeline, Naruto Uzumaki from Kanagaku no Sato was defeated by Sasuke Uchiha, a traitor to Konoha, in the Valley of the End. Because of this, he returned home and trained to become stronger and bring Sasuke back. What he didn't know was that because of this, there were 2 deaths in the world, which led to the conquering of the elemental nations by an evil from another realm. One was his only surviving blood relative, who died 2 years later, fighting against impossible odds. The other was a hero from another realm, who was killed a few days after arriving. But that is not this timeline. Naruto slowly stood up in the crater he was in at the foot of the Shodaime Hokage's statue. The Kyuubi's chakra swirled around him, forming a type of cloak that was shaped like a fox. It formed 2 fox ears above his head and 1 tail behind him. Across from him, in a crater in the statue of Madara Uchiha, Sasuke Uchiha was crouched over. The curse mark placed on him had gone to level 2, turning the Uchiha skin a dark brown gray, and his black hair gray as well. His eyes were black, with amber pupils. 2 massive hands erupted from his back, like demonic wings. Suddenly, Sasuke clutched his shoulder, where his curse mark was. At the same time, Naruto felt his left arm going numb, and he grimaced. I can't hold this power for long. It's too much. I see you can't hold that power for long either. Then let's end this now. Sasuke smirked as he held his hand to the ground, his palms spread. Gray lightning formed in his hand, creating a chirping sound like 1,000 birds. Naruto nodded and held out his right hand. A swirling vortex of chakra formed in it, but turned purple because of the effects of the demonic chakra. But suddenly, a voice echoed in his head. Stupid mortal. He'll overpower you. Don't meet him like this. Take him out another way. Naruto would have told the demon Kitsune to shut up if Sasuke hadn't launched himself at Naruto, his wings flapping. Naruto leapt forward, holding his attack ready. But as they drew closer, a plan formed in Naruto's head. Just as they were about to collide, Naruto let go of his jutsu and used his right hand to knock Sasuke's attack to one side. At the same time, a left hook smashed into Sasuke's face and drove him into the rocks behind the waterfall. Both of them fell to the waters below. Several minutes later, Kakashi Hatake, the famous copycat ninja of Konoha, arrived at the scene. The sliver-haired Jounin scanned the battlefield until he spotted a patch of orange on the far bank. He and his pug dog summoned Pakin moved quickly. When they arrived, they found an unconscious Sasuke, with 2 large rips in the back of his blue Uchiha Genin shirt. Naruto was lying next to him, having dragged the unconscious boy out of the water. Naruto was definitely worse for wear. There was a hole in his orange jacket, which the scarring underneath confirmed what Kakashi feared. He used Chidori on Naruto. Why? Why did I teach him that blasted jutsu? Naruto turned and smiled weakly at Kakashi. Hey, Sensei. Sasuke. Still here? Yeah. You got him, Naruto. He's here, and we can take him back. That's good. I kept my promise. With that, Naruto fell unconscious. Kakashi checked him over. He's alive, but he needs rest. And this blasted rain isn't helping. Kakashi created a shadow clone before turning to Pakin. Return to Hokage-sama and tell her mission success. Sasuke has been captured. Tell her to have the hospital on ready for both Naruto and Sasuke. Right. The little pug looked at Naruto. He's one heck of a kid. I can't believe he defeated Sasuke Uchiha. He's a lot stronger than we give him credit for. With that, Pakin disappeared, and the Kakashis carried Naruto and Sasuke away. At the gates of Konoha, several people waited. Most were dressed in the garb of the medic ninjas of Konoha's hospital. A few were ANBU, while the remaining 2 were the Chunin guards at the gate post. The other one with them was a pink-haired Genin Kunoichi, dressed in a red dress/shirt and charcoal black shorts. Sakura Haruno had watched as one by one the Sasuke retrieval squad was brought back in. Chuji was thin and pale as death. Niji had numerous piercing wounds on his body. Kiba, being carried by Kankuro of Suna, was still conscious, but bleeding from his side, while Akamaru was out cold. Shikamaru, with Temari, only had a broken finger, and Lee was fine, other than a couple cuts strained to his injured leg and arm, and being tired. Gaara of Suna was about the same as Lee. Nobody else saw the other Kunoichi hiding nearby, her lavender eyes watching the forest for any sign of orange. The wind ruffled her short, indigo-blue hair, and the two bangs that framed her face. She was wearing a large biega coat, with a furry collar and a red flame over a gold field. She had on black short pants, with a shuriken holster tied around her right thigh. She was holding her hands together, almost like she was praying. Is he safe? Hinata Hyuga wondered. Please, let him be safe. Suddenly, there was a shout from atop the wall. Several shapes appeared in the distance, and within seconds, the last of the medical teams arrived. One of the medics was carrying Sasuke Uchiha, and Kakashi was carrying Naruto Uzumaki. Sakura became overjoyed to see Sasuke, but that joy was diminished when she saw he was unconscious and had dried blood in his hair and on one of his arms. She didn't pay any attention to Naruto, but Hinata did. She saw the wounds he had and was almost in tears at the pitiful state he seemed to be in. He can't be dead. She sank to the ground, crying, as the group rushed past to the hospital. The gate was closed, and Konoha was secured. Tsunade sighed as she finished filling out the paperwork on the mission. It had been a success, but was close to a disaster. Niji Hyuga and Chuji Akimichi almost died, and would be out of action for a while. Kiba was not as bad, but Akamaru was hurt bad, so the two would be down for a while too. But it was Naruto that had her worried. She had checked him over and found that if it wasn't for the Kyuubi, he never would have survived the Chidori shoved into him by Sasuke. He would probably be out of action for a week or two, unless Kyuubi healed him even more than usual. As for the Uchiha, he was fine, other than damage from a severe beating and having his head smashed into a rock. She sighed as she sat back. She knew there would be a multitude of problems because of this mission, but she was just happy that Naruto had come back in one piece. In Rice Country, in Otogekure no Sato, in Orochimaru's private chamber, the snake Sannin was beyond anger. What do you mean they failed? Kabuto Yakushi quailed in front of his master's fury. They were tracked down by a team from Konoha. It seems they were all genin, led by one Chunin. Are you telling me that my prize Sound 5 were beaten by mere children? One of them was Naruto Uzumaki, Orochimaru-sama. Orochimaru snarled in anger. Contact our ally in Konoha. Tell him that no matter what it takes, Naruto Uzumaki must be driven from Konoha and left on the outside for me to deal with. Tell him I will help him achieve his dream if he does this. Kabuto bowed. Yes, Orochimaru-sama. Kabuto quickly left and headed to find one of the operatives who could sneak into Konoha. Orochimaru snarled in anger as he beat the fist of his new body on the armrest of his throne. I will have the Uchiha's body, no matter what. Next day, Hinata made her way slowly through the halls of the hospital until she came to the door she had wanted. Slowly steeling herself, she opened it, but stopped at what she saw. Naruto was covered in bandages, with only his eyes, mouth, and hair visible. He was still unconscious, but was breathing easily. Hinata's eyes watered, and she brushed away the tears in them. Slowly, she approached the bed and placed the simple vase with one yellow flower in it on the bedside table. She sat in a seat next to the bed. And Naruto-kun, I'm glad you're okay, she said softly, before breaking down into tears. Elsewhere, Sakura was angry. She had just seen Sasuke, who had bandages over his nose and covering the top of his head. He was still unconscious. Sakura stormed up towards Naruto's room. He promised to bring him back, but he didn't need to beat him up like that. Did he? Of course not. Sakura reached the room and opened the door, only to stop as she saw Naruto. She hadn't realized that he had been hurt so badly that he had needed to be almost completely bandaged. She turned to see Hinata sniffling and looking at her. Sakura, what are you doing here? Sakura immediately felt guilty and slowly came in, closing the door. What neither girl realized was that Naruto was actually in a state of unconscious awareness. In his mindscape, he was awake and aware that there were two people in his room. He could tell from the stuttering that one was Hinata. What a weird girl. I wonder what she's doing here. But he had been happy to hear Sakura-chan was here also. Sakura slowly came over. Suki-kun. I wanted to come check on Naruto. Naruto's mindscape self fell from joy to depression. Of course, she wanted to see the team first. Hinata looked up at the pink-haired girl. WHY Sasuke first. Didn't you want to thank Naruto-kun F for B bringing him back? Sakura glanced guiltily at Hinata. Well, I didn't know Naruto was hurt this bad. I saw Sasuke was hurt real bad, so I wanted to make sure he was okay. Naruto's mindscape self slowly sat on the floor, completely depressed. So I was right. When I saw her at the gate, before we left. She really does care about the team, and not me. I guess I just need to back off. Hinata felt a small flare of anger towards Sakura. I would think you would want to check on Naruto-kun, since he was your loyal friend and teammate. Her anger caused her to forget her shyness, and her stutter disappeared. Sakura flinched under Hinata's words and stare. Well, I dash. Sakura, I don't know what you see in Sasuke. He's spoiled, he's self-centered, he's cold to everyone, he betrayed the village, and he almost killed one of your teammates. Don't you have any decency? Sakura broke down at this and started to cry. I'm sorry. I didn't know. I don't know anything anymore. She slumped to the ground, crying. Naruto, listening to everything, was quite shocked. I've never heard Hinata talk or act like that before. What got into her? Hinata slowly walked over and kneeled next to Sakura. Sakura, you need to remember that you have two teammates, not just one. You should care about how both of them feel. Sakura looked up at Hinata and nodded. She smiled as she wiped a tear away. You really care for Naruto, don't you? Hinata blushed, but she nodded. Why, yes. I do really care for him. I just wish I could tell him. In his mind, Naruto's head snapped to attention at these words. What? Did she just say that she cared for me? Naruto stood up and began to walk down the corridors of his memories. Here and there, he would stop and examine memories involving Hinata. She would always become so quiet and shy around me. She would go all red, but what if it wasn't a fever? And during the prelims, she gave me that medicine. And later, she helped me when I felt all nervous about fighting Niji. Does this mean? Of course it does. You dumb mortal. The Hyuga girl likes you. Naruto found himself in front of the cage of Kyubi, who glared down at him. The kitsune's lips furled in a sneer. She's had a crush on you since the first day of the academy. I may not have been awake, but I've seen your memories. Naruto stood there in shock and slowly sat down. All this time, and she's cared for me. Why? Nobody does, except for Irika, the old man, Tucci, and I am. Well, she does too. Kami, you are so dense. With that, the fox closed its eyes, and Naruto suddenly felt himself in his body. He slowly cracked open an eye and saw Hinata and Sakura talking quietly. Naruto looked Hinata over, as things began to make sense now. She is cute. Not physically cute, like Ino and Sakura. It's like an aura around her. But she is also physically cute. Maybe I should try and get closer to her? Maybe she is what I've been missing in my life. Naruto tried to speak, but all that came out was a croak. But it caught both girls' attention, and they turned towards him. He cleared his throat and smiled at them. Hey, anyone want to get me some water? Hinata went red and started to push her index fingers together, while Sakura just smiled. She got Naruto a glass of water and helped him drink it. When Naruto smiled at Sakura in thanks, Hinata felt her heart drop. He likes her still, and because she will be nicer to him, I've pushed myself further away. Maybe I should give up. Naruto saw the sad look in Hinata's eyes as she turned towards the door. Hinata, where are you going? She gasped and turned around, her face glowing. I was WLI. Her fingers were pushing together so fast, they could break at any moment. Naruto smiled encouragingly at her, trying to calm her down. It worked somewhat, as her fingers slowed down, and her face dropped a few shades. Naruto decided then that maybe it would be worth a shot to becoming closer to Hinata. She at least wouldn't hit him. Well, I was wondering if maybe after I get out of the hospital, Would you like to have some ramen with me? Hinata just completely froze as she heard those words. She couldn't believe it. Naruto, the boy she had been secretly crushing on for 5 years, just asked her to eat with him. She felt the darkness closing in on her, but she managed a faint yes before falling over. Sakura rushed over and managed to catch her and placed in one of the extra beds before turning to Naruto in shock. Naruto, did you just ask her out to ramen? Yeah, why? Why didn't you ask me? Naruto slowly turned his face away. Because you have your Sasuke-kun back, and I know you don't really like me. Sakura felt the tears well up and came over to Naruto. Naruto, it's true I don't see you as a boyfriend or something, but that doesn't mean you can't be my friend. I've been a bad teammate, and I want to make it up to you. Naruto looked at her and smiled. Okay, I'll take that. Maybe we can train together along with some of the others. Sakura nodded. Okay. Can I get you anything? Naruto shook his head. No, but you may want to stick around for when she wakes up. I doubt she'll believe that wasn't a dream unless you tell her. Sakura nodded. Sure, but you be nice with her. Understand? Naruto nodded. Right, but right now I think I need to sleep. He slowly closed his eyes, letting his body rest. A smile lit up his face. Sakura smiled at the sight of her sleeping comrade before taking Hinata's chair and waiting for the Hyuga heiress to awaken. That afternoon, Tsunade didn't know why this council meeting had been called, since she hadn't called it. But ever since the Yondaime died, and her old sensei, Sarutobi, retook his job as the Sandaime, the council had gained more power, until they believed they controlled Konoha. Or at least the civilian half did. Danzu slowly stood up. The crippled war hawk took a look around with his one eye before speaking. Fellow council members, as you know, Sasuke Uchiha, last if that illustrious clan, recently attempted to leave Konoha and join Orochimaru. It has come to my attention that the reason why was because he was seeking power to defeat his older brother, Itachi Uchiha, who slaughtered the Uchiha clan. Many of the council began to murmur to themselves. Danzu continued. He was stopped from leaving and returned her. However, he was injured more so than was necessary to bring him back. And the person who caused these injuries? None other than Naruto Uzumaki. At the mention of Naruto's name, many of the civilian council members hissed in anger and disgust. One even muttered a word that suspiciously sounded like demon. The ninja council members, which consisted of the major clan heads and the village elders, merely looked at each other. Tsunade sighed. Is there a point to all this, Danzu? There is. Naruto Uzumaki has threatened and used excessive force against the future of Konoha. Under normal circumstances, this would automatically call for his execution. Tsunade sat upright as the clan heads began to talk to each other. None of them really had a problem with Naruto. Some had even enjoyed his pranks. But the civilian members cheered, and some even began yelling for the execution. Danzu held up his good hand. However, his actions in bringing the Uchiha back earn him consideration. That is why I say the boy should be banished from Konoha. Immediately, the council divided in two. The civilian members applauded and cheered, while the clan heads roared out in protest. Tsunade stood to her feet. And what of the excessive force used against Naruto? He had a Chidori shoved into him. As far as I can tell, Naruto did nothing more than beat Sasuke enough to bring him back alive and uncrippled, while Sasuke Uchiha tried to kill him. It's too bad he didn't. That boy should have never been allowed to live. More cheers and roars followed this statement. Before anyone could protest further, Danzu shouted, I call the vote. All those in favor? The entire civilian part of the council, along with Danzu, raised their hands. He smirked, knowing he had already won. All those opposed? Hayashi Hyuga, Shibi Aburame, Tsum Inuzuka, Inoichi Yamanaka, Shikaka Nara, Chuza Akimichi, Hamura Mitokado, and Koharu Udatane raised their hands. Sunday, being Hokage, couldn't vote, but merely try to influence the council to see her view. She shook in rage as Danzu smugly looked around. In an 8-10 vote, the punishment is decided. 3 days after he has recovered enough to be dismissed from the hospital, Naruto Uzumaki will be banished from Konoha and the surrounding 5-mile area. The night of the next day, Naruto lay in bed, reading a manga that Sakura had gotten for him. Outside, the light of the village blotted out the stars in the night sky. He smiled happily as he remembered his upcoming friend date with Hinata. When Hinata had regained consciousness and been assured that Naruto asking her to lunch with him wasn't a dream, she had smiled and thanked Naruto for his invitation. Then she had left, a happy smile on her face. Naruto was glad he had made her so happy. Who knows? Maybe I've been going after the wrong girl this whole time. Hinata feels more like a person I would want to be around. He flipped a page, reading the next section, when there is a knocking on his door. When he tells them to enter, Jiraiya stumbled in. Naruto looked at him, wondering what the old pervert wanted. Hey, Erosenin, what is it? Then he noticed the look on the old man's face. It was one of pure despair. Naruto felt something drop in his stomach. Jiraiya? What is it? The toad Sannin turned to Naruto. Kid, I don't know how to tell you this. I still can't believe it myself. What? What is it? Jiraiya sighed and sat down. He stared at Naruto for several minutes, then sighed. The council had a meeting today. They were talking about you. Yes, so? They do that all the time. Not like this. Danzu, one of the older members, charged you with excessive force in returning Sasuke Uchiha. He called a vote to have you banished. Naruto just sat there, staring at Jiraiya. What? Yeah, the civilians, because they all hate you, voted with him. None of the other ninjas did, though. It was close, but Danzu had you banished the minute he called for it. I'm so sorry, kid. Naruto just sat there, unable to do anything but let tears roll down his face. Jiraiya slowly reached out and hugged Naruto. Minato, I'm so sorry. I couldn't save your son. I'm his freaking godfather, and I let him down. Naruto just sat there in Jiraiya's embrace as the tears continued to fall down his face. In the land of Earth, out in the middle of a barren plain, a strange occurrence began. A dark mass of energy slowly began to form, spinning and crackling with lightning bolts. Suddenly, a gloved fist emerged from the mass, and a tall, heavily muscular man fell out. He slowly stood to his feet, yelling to the sky above, "Free! I am free!" He laughed maniacally as a strange glow emanated from his right hand. 3 golden triangles forming one large one. Naruto numbly pulled his orange jacket on and zipped it up. He didn't even bother tying his headband on. He merely put it in his pocket before gathering the few personal items in his hospital room. Eventually, word of his banishment had leaked out. Almost every one of his friends had come to see him afterwards, except those who were hospitalized, and Hinata. All of them were shocked and tried to comfort him. Some had brought him gifts. He had accepted them, but had barely talked to any of them. Eventually, they had left him be. Now, 7 days after defeating Sasuke, Naruto was well enough to be discharged. He slowly left his hospital room and walked down the halls. When he reached the lobby, he was surprised to find several doctors and nurses waiting. One of them came over, a sad look on his face. Naruto, I'm sorry about all this. We want you to know that we are outraged at what happened, and even more so that most of the staff is glad to see you gone. Please, we want you to have this. The doctor gave him a storage scroll with the kanji for health on it. It's filled with things you need to heal your injuries and other such things. I hope it will help you. Naruto looked at it, then looked up, a faint and weak smile on his lips. Thanks. This means a lot to me. He hugged the doctor and the others as well. He smiled at each of them. I'll talk to Bachan about all of you. Maybe she can help you guys get this place in order. Then with a sad wave, he left the hospital. He slowly walked through the streets of Konoha on the way to his apartment. He barely even noticed the glares he received, except now they were mixed with looks of triumph. The citizens of Konoha were glad someone had finally gotten rid of the demon. A few even taunted Naruto as he passed. All hail the future Hokage. Serves you right. Suddenly, a rock sailed out of nowhere and struck one of the citizens in the back of the head, knocking him out. The others looked around, but weren't able to see anyone. Suddenly, Anko Mitarashi landed in the middle of them. Boo! With a yell, they all ran, scared of the snake mistress of Konoha. The purple-haired interrogation, Jounin laughed, before joining Naruto. She was wearing her brown skirt, jacket, fishnet shirt, and shin guards. She threw one arm around Naruto. Ah, cheer up, Gaki. Look at it this way. At least you don't have to put up with any more crap from the villagers. She smiled at Naruto, only to somber up at the depressed look he gave her. She sighed as she walked with him. After the Chunin exams, She started to warm up to the annoying blonde, who was like her in the fact both were hated for something they had no control in. He for Kyuubi, she for being Orochimaru's apprentice. Naruto, I don't honestly know what to tell you. All I know is that you can't give in to despair, or you won't last 5 minutes out there. Come on, cheer up a little. Naruto sighed. I just can't believe it. After everything I've done to help this village, they still only see Kyuubi. Enko nodded. It's the curse you and I will always live with. Tell you what, if it will make you feel better, I'll torture some of these villagers for you. Naruto shook his head, but a smile was on his lips. Enko grinned herself. There we go. Now, what are you going to do? 3 days, not having a care in the world would be heaven to me. Naruto sighed. I'm going to hang out with my friends whenever I can. I'm also going to make sure I have everything I need to survive out there. Enko nodded. I actually have something for you. Here, I thought you might like this. She handed him a scroll, which he opened. It's a few jutsus to back up your clones and Rasengan. Nothing serious, but they'll do in a pinch. Naruto smiled and suddenly hugged Enko, who was surprised, but let him. Thanks a bunch. You know, it's nice to know there will be another hyperactive person to give the villagers trouble. Count on it. Now get off me, Gaki. I have a reputation to keep. Naruto nodded and let go. He smiled at her again. Thanks, Enko-sensei. Take care. As he walked away, Enko's face fell a little. You too, Gaki. You too. Hinata stood outside Naruto's apartment, waiting for him. She glanced around, wondering how life could go on like it was. To her, it felt like the world should be shrouded in perpetual depression. It was quite a contrast to how she had been feeling the day after Naruto had asked her to lunch. Flashback. Hinata smiled happily as she hummed a tune to herself. She had just woken up from a happy sleep where she had dreamed of and Naruto going on dates, and then him kissing her and telling her he loved her. She couldn't wait for him to leave the hospital because then they could meet at Ichiraku and have ramen together. She passed by Hanabi's room just as the door opened. Hanabi was quite surprised when she suddenly hugged her. Morning, Nachan. It is a wonderful day, isn't it? Hanabi watched as she went on her way, humming and almost skipping. She silently wondered what had her so happy before following her to the kitchen. Just as she was passing her father's study, his voice called out to her. Hinata, will you come in here, please? Hinata immediately sobered, and a small flicker of fear entered her. Does he know? She wondered before entering. She bowed to him. You called for me? Oda-san? Hayashi Hyuga looked at his daughter sadly. He knew he had treated her rough, but it had been to toughen her up. Now he felt horrible, especially with what he was about to tell her. Hinata, is it true what I have heard? That you have feelings for one Naruto, Uzumaki? Hinata's eyes widened. WL? Why yes, Oda-san. I do like Naruto-K. I mean Naruto. Hayashi sighed. I wish that was not so. There was a council meeting about him yesterday. I'm afraid the worst has happened. He was banished for assaulting Sasuke Uchiha. Hinata's eyes didn't betray anything. She just stood there. I see. Thank you for telling me. Slowly, she bowed and left the room. Almost as soon as the door closed, he heard her burst into tears and the sound of her feet as she ran back to her room. Hayashi slowly gripped his desk, tears of his own running down his face. Flashback ends. Hinata hadn't left her room since then. The shock of what she had learned had put her into a conscious coma. It wasn't until Sakura had reminded her of her lunch date that she had awakened and gotten ready. Now, she was waiting for a crush. Why? Why do they hate him so much? He's a hero for bringing Sasuke back and stopping Gaara during the invasion. Her thoughts were interrupted by footsteps coming her way. She turned to see Naruto come around the corner, his head down in a scroll. He looked up, and immediately pain was readable as he saw her. He came over, storing the scroll away. Hinata, what are you doing here? We were going to have lunch. But I can understand if you changed why your mind. Naruto immediately shook his head. No, I've just had a lot on my mind. As he was unlocking his door, Hinata nodded. I know. And my father told me. Naruto stiffened, then his shoulders fell. Yeah, I guess he would tell you that. Ichi was really upset. Ichi's always supported YU. Especially after you helped Niji and Isan. Naruto smiled. That's good. He opened his apartment, only to stop. The room had been trashed. His bed was shredded. His refrigerator was destroyed. and someone had strewn all his belongings everywhere. He slowly walked on spilled ramen cups and broken kunai. Hinata gasped in horror as she saw someone had painted demon scum along one wall. And Naruto-kun? Well, at least they left my clothes alone this time, he said as he pulled them out of his closet and drawers. He packed them away, along with a few other items. Then he lifted a floorboard, pulled out several scrolls, and packed them away too. He turned to Hinata. I wasn't planning on staying here anyways. Old Bachan wanted me near her till I had to leave. Come on, I'll take you to get ramen now. He slung the pack on his back and gently took her hand. If it wasn't for what she had seen in his apartment, she would have fainted. As it was, she blushed deeply as he led her to his favorite eating place, leaving his apartment forever. Tucci and Ayam greeted their favorite customer, but a sadness tinged the greeting. I guess you both have heard too? Ayam nodded. It's all over the village now. Dad actually booted several customers out because they were going on about how you had finally been taken care of. Naruto sighed. Yeah, sorry I won't be around to keep you guys going. Tucci smiled as he placed a bowl of miso ramen in front of him and his new low-fat ramen in front of Hinata. It's all right. Who knows? Maybe we'll just leave with you. Naruto shook his head. It would be bad for your business. Besides, I'll probably have people after me out there. I don't want you to get hurt. Tucci nodded. Hinata and Naruto slowly began to eat and talk. Slowly, Hinata felt herself opening up around Naruto. Now that he was paying attention to her, she felt her confidence rise. She just wished they could have done it sooner. Eventually, she couldn't stop from asking Naruto a question that had been bothering her. And Naruto-kun? Why does everyone treat you so badly? Why did they trash your apartment and write that horrible stuff on your wall? Naruto, Tucci, and I am all stiffened. Naruto sighed and placed his chopsticks on the counter. In a way, I'm glad you asked. This is something you deserve to know because you seem to care for me so much. He slowly turned towards her. Do you remember what we learned about the Yondaime and the Kyuubi? Hinata nodded. The Yondaime fought the K-Kyuubi 13 years ago. Ichi died, K killing the D-Demon. Naruto shook his head. It was all a lie. The Kyuubi was too powerful to kill. Instead, the Yondaime sealed him in the body of a newborn, the only new baby born on October 10th. Hinata gasped, her eyes widening. Tucci gripped his ladle, and Ayam looked between Naruto and Hinata. Naruto turned away from Hinata. That's why so many people hate me. That is why they tore apart my apartment. That is why they call me demon scum. Because the Yondaime sealed the Kyuubi in me. He slowly shuddered as tears began to fall down his face. I understand if you want to run. I wouldn't blame you. He heard her get off her stool and expected to hear her running footsteps. Instead, he felt a pair of arms encircle him. He stiffened in surprise as he felt Hinata hug him. And Naruto-kun, why would I run from a H-hero like you? Naruto slowly looked over his shoulder as Hinata pulled back. She smiled as she wiped away tears. Naruto just stared at her. Why you aren't scared? Hinata shook her head. Why? K-Kyuubi is S-sealed in YU. YU aren't Kyuubi. Naruto just stared at her, then hugged her, his tears falling onto her shoulder. She eeped in surprise, but then hugged him back. He held her tightly, in a friendly way. I never thought I could tell anyone. I was afraid to lose my friends if I did. Hinata, thank you. You're a real good friend. Hinata sighed internally as she heard this. I want to be more, but he seems to care for me and is starting to see me. Maybe someday, if he comes back, maybe we can be more then. She leaned her head against Naruto's shoulder. Naruto just held her for several minutes in that hug. Inside, he was a mass of confusion. She really cares for me, and she doesn't see me as Kyuubi. She's so incredible. I've never had a friend like this before, but I wish I did. But she likes me as more than a friend. I don't know if I could be that. I'm leaving, so I don't want to get her hopes up. But I want her to be happy, and I really am feeling for her now. Slowly, they pulled apart, and Naruto just smiled as he wiped away his tears. Hinata-chan, can you promise me something? Hinata blushed at the added suffix. Naruto-kun, promise me that you won't tell anyone, unless you know you can trust them. Please? Hinata nodded. I promise. Naruto smiled, a real genuine smile. Thank you. You really are a true friend. He trooned back to his food and started to eat. Hinata smiled at the return of his good humor. She slowly turned back to her food. I wish I could just leave with him, but they would send hunter ninjas after us and would probably kill him. I guess I'll stay here and wait. I know Naruto-kun will come back. Her resolve stronger, she went back to eating. After they were both won, they went and walked around the park and other areas, talking about anything. Naruto felt so free now, being able to talk to Hinata about anything, including Kyuubi. He never felt this way with anyone before, even with the old man or Jiraiya. With him, I had to be careful in case they thought I was a threat. But with Hinata-chan, I can be free. He smiled as they strolled along. As the hour grew late, Naruto escorted Hinata back to the Hyuga estate. He stopped a distance away, afraid some Hyuga guard might attack him. He slowly turned to Hinata. I had a really great time with you, more than I've ever had before. Thank you. Hinata smiled under a blush. And no problem, Naruto-kun. Naruto smiled and hugged her close. I hope to see you again before I leave. Hinata nodded. Me too. And maybe another lunch date? Naruto smiled. I'd like that. See you around. He turned and leapt away. Hinata smiled as he left. It was just like I thought. He is really wonderful. Slowly, she walked back home, her heart a mixture of happiness and sadness. Naruto slipped into the Hokage Tower and into the inner living quarters. Tsunade and Shizen were in the living room/entertainment room for meeting with friends and foreign dignitaries. Tsunade looked up at Naruto. Any problems? Besides my apartment being trashed? No. I had a great time today. I just wished I could have more of them. He headed off to the guest room Tsunade had given him. The blonde Sannin turned to Shizen. I want 2 EMBU watching his room. Ones we can trust. Send 2 more to the apartment landlord to find out how his apartment was trashed without him hearing anything. Shizen nodded and headed off. Tsunade sighed. It had been torture the past few days. Naruto, despite the short time he had been in her life, was such a light in her life. Now, that light was going to be gone. She punched the table in front of the couch she was on, smashing it in two. I swear, if I ever run into Danza by himself in a dark alleyway, there won't be enough left to fill a teaspoon with. With that thought, she headed to her room to try and sleep. The next 2 days, Naruto did his best to remain upbeat. He visited his friends in the hospital, often accompanied by Hinata. Niji, Chuji, and Kiba, once they were awake, also voiced their surprise and outrage at his banishment. Naruto smiled, thanking each of them. He had also bought new kunai and shuriken, along with somewhat more drab-colored civilian clothes. Hinata had helped him with that one, as most of the shopkeepers refused service to him on site. He had also hung out with Gaara, who had asked Naruto if he wanted him to slaughter the civilian council members and say that it was an accident. Flashback. No. Gada. That would just lead to a war between Suna and Konoha. I couldn't have you risk that. Maybe you could join Suna? We could use another ninja of your skills. Naruto smiled as he shook his head. I'm grateful, but no. These Akatsuki guys are after me, and you. If both of us are in one place, they would just send more of their guys after us. Besides, I want to travel around for a bit, see some sights. The red-haired Jinchuriki nodded. If you ever need someplace to stay, my family's door is always open. Naruto smiled and shook Gaara's hand. Thanks. Maybe I'll take you up on that offer. Flashback ends. Now, it was the morning of the day. Naruto and Tsunade left the Hokage's tower with an escort of 4 ANBU. They made their way through the streets of Konoha. Many people came out to watch, and most had looks of triumph on their faces. But a few were truly sad. They bowed their heads as Naruto passed, and a few silently prayed to Kami for forgiveness of this tragedy. At the gate, Naruto was surprised to see all of his friends and the senseis waiting for him. Also, there was the Konomaru Corps, Anko, Irika, Tuchi, and Ayam. Naruto smiled at all of them. You all came to see me off. Shikamaru nodded. It was troublesome, but you deserve it. Naruto shook his hand. Thanks. He and Chuji, who was still supported by Asuma, hugged. He hugged both Kiba and Lee, then shook hands with Niji. Tenten and Ino both hugged him. Then he came to Sakura. I'm really sorry about this. Maybe it would have been better if Sasuke had gotten away. Naruto shook his head. At least I kept my promise. Can you do one thing for me? What? Give Sasuke hell for me. Please? Sakura laughed as she playfully punched Naruto. Then she hugged him as she began to cry. I'll actually miss you. We'll run into each other someday. Believe it. He hugged the entire Konohamaru Corps, shook hands with Kakashi and Asuma, hugged Kurenai, who gently stroked his hair. Guy pulled him into a bone-crunching hug before releasing him to Irika, who gave him a much more gentle hug. Anko punched him in the shoulder, and he just smiled. He hugged Ayam, who kissed him on the forehead, and Tucci, who promised to one day find Naruto and give him as much free ramen as he wanted. Finally, Naruto came to Hinata. They looked at each other for several minutes. Finally, Naruto pulled her to him in a hug. I think I'll miss you most of all, he whispered as he began to cry. Me too, Naruto-kun. Hinata-chan, can you promise me 2 more things? What? Promise me you will become strong. Promise me you'll be the strongest kunoichi ever. I will. I'll be strong so I can be clan head and vote to have you brought back. Naruto nodded. Hinata, this is hard, but I know you care for me. I know you like me, and maybe even more than that. But if you find yourself beginning to like someone else, promise me you will move on. Promise me that you will live a life of happiness. Hinata fought back tears. I don't know if I can, Naruto-kun. I will wait for you. If it will make you happy, then I will try. But I think I could only really be happy with you. Naruto smiled, even as he cried. That means a lot. Hinata-chan, I wish I had known sooner. I wish I hadn't been so dense that I never noticed you. I'll never forget you. Hinata nodded, then suddenly grabbed him and kissed him. Almost as quickly, she let go, blushing. Naruto stood there, then blushed, but with a smile on his face. He pulled out his headband and handed it to her. She took it and nodded before stepping back. The smile on Naruto's face faded as he turned to the gate. He stood there for several seconds as Tsunade came over to him. Jiraiya is waiting at the 5-mile mark. He can't keep you company, but he has some things he wanted to give you. Naruto nodded before hugging her. I'm gonna miss you, Bachan. I'll miss you too. It's gonna be quiet around here without you. Naruto just stood there, then pulled away. He nodded to everyone before turning back to the gate. With slow footsteps, he slowly exited Konoha, never to return. As all this was happening, Sasuke Uchiha was finally regaining consciousness. He slowly looked around at where he was and recognized it as the Konoha hospital. At that moment, a nurse walked in. Uchiha-san, you're awake. Sasuke just stared at the nurse and said one thing. Where is Naruto Uzumaki? Naruto slowly made his way along the road. Looking back, he could barely see what had once been his home. Sighing deeply, he turned back to the road ahead. Suddenly, the ever-annoying voice in his head started up again. I don't see why you were so upset. The place was a dump anyways. Shut up. I don't even want to talk with you. Hey, we're going to be spending plenty of time together. You might as well get used to talking to me. Naruto's anger flared. And whose fault is that? It's yours. If you hadn't attacked Konoha, you wouldn't have been sealed in me. My life has been one problem after another, all because of you. So just shut up, because I wouldn't rather commit suicide than consider even having a decent conversation with you. With that, he closed his mind down to the angry growls emanating from the fox demon. He sighed as he looked ahead. He was almost at the 5-mile border mark. Once past it, he could never set foot within those 5 miles again. He sighed as he thought back to all his friends. Slowly, they passed through his mind until he came to Hinata. He still felt the kiss on his lips and slowly wished that he could experience it more. She was so perfect. She was everything I ever wanted, and I blew it all on Sakura. Man, I really am a baka. Naruto continued to berate himself as he passed over the invisible boundary and by the toad Sannin. Naruto! The blonde boy turned to see Jiraiya joining him. You okay? Yeah, just thinking how stupid I was. Hinata-chan was so great, and I could have had her in my life sooner. So, you pretty serious about her, huh? Naruto blushed. I don't know. She seemed so perfect, and I really like being with her. I'm not saying I do love her, but I think given enough time, I might have. Jiraiya sighed and ruffled Naruto's hair. There's nothing to do now, but hope everything turns out okay. Now listen. Unfortunately, since you are not even a ninja of Konoha, I can't actually train you, as it would be seen as treason by the council, and they would have me locked away or killed. But I can give you these. Jiraiya reached into his gray jacket and pulled out 2 scrolls. He handed both to Naruto. This first scroll is the one you need to read first, when you are somewhere safe. It, it explains a few things. This other one contains several jutsus and other items that would have become yours when you were 16. Now, they aren't safe in Konoha. Naruto took the scrolls. Jiraiya reached into his jacket again and pulled out a headband. The black cloth was somewhat faded, but the metal was polished. Jiraiya handed it to him. This was your mother's. She would have wanted you to have it. Naruto slowly took the headband. On it was an emblem of 8 lines forming a swirl, almost like a pinwheel. Naruto gently traced the design. What? What village is this? Ufuwakure no Sato. They were famous for their kenjutsu, as well as water jutsus. Unfortunately, they were small, and during the last war, IWA overran them. Your mother was a jounin, who met your father when he came to her village. They fell in love, and she left to join Konoha. After Yuzu fell, she became vicious to any IWA shinobi she found. But then she became pregnant with you, and was pulled from active duty. She died, giving birth to you. Naruto slowly gripped the headband tighter. Then he looked up at Jiraiya. Then you knew my father? The white-haired sage turned away. I did. He was a brave man who died during Kyuubi's attack. It's all in the scroll there. Naruto, no matter what, know that your parents loved you and only wanted the best for you. Then he suddenly grabbed Naruto in a hug, as a few tears fell from his eyes. You're my godson. I was supposed to protect you, and I failed. I failed miserably. Naruto slowly pulled himself from Jiraiya's grasp. It's okay, Ero Sennin. I don't blame you. He smiled and held out a hand. Jiraiya slowly took it, and they shook. I guess I'll see you around sometime? Yeah. Oh, I almost forgot. Listen, I managed to arrange for a way for you to keep in contact with Tsunade and the others. Naruto's eyes widened. How? All right. What you do is write a letter, or whatever. Summon Gamakichi, and give him the letters, or whatever your message is. I've set up a special seal, so that when you send him back, he can pop up in Tsunade's office. Of course, it only works if Tsunade is alone in the office. That way, no one will be able to intercept your messages. Naruto smiled. This is great. I can keep in contact with everyone. He hugged Jiraiya. Thank you. Thank you so much. Jiraiya smiled. It's the least I can do. I hope it makes up for all the times I've failed you. Naruto just smiled at him. Forget it. I think we're even. Jiraiya nodded before looking back towards the village. I'm tempted to just leave and never come back. Naruto shook his head. No, please. I need you to help keep an eye on the others for me. Please? Jiraiya nodded. Fine. I need to get going. I expect to hear from you soon. I will. Naruto yelled as Jiraiya jumped into the trees and sped away. Slowly, Naruto looked at the 2 scrolls and the headband. He stored the scrolls away and placed the headband in his pocket before heading out. Night began to fall as Naruto set up camp for the night. He hadn't been able to reach one of the smaller towns yet, so he planned to sleep until the sun had barely risen, then break for the closest town. After obtaining what supplies he needed, he thought he would start asking around to find where Yuzu had once stood. He reached in his pack and pulled out the first scroll Jiraiya had given him. After a moment's hesitation, he opened it. Dear Naruto, there is much I have wanted to tell you, but couldn't because you weren't old enough yet. Now it seems that doesn't matter now. I know who your parents were, Naruto, and they were great shinobi who would have loved you and given you the best home they could. Your mother was Kushina Uzumaki, Jounin of Yuzu, and also known as the Reed Death for her silent kills and red hair. As for your father, I hope you were prepared for this. Your father was perhaps the greatest ninja I have ever had the privilege to know. He was the Yondaime Hokage, the Yellow Flash, Minato Namikaze. Yes, your father was the one who sealed the Kyuubi in you. Naruto gripped the scroll tightly, almost ripping it. His father was the Yondaime, the most famous ninja ever, the one who had consigned him to 13 years of misery? Naruto couldn't believe it, but forced himself to read on. You have to understand, it was the last thing Minato wanted. But he couldn't ask another to do something he wasn't capable of doing himself. He thought Kushina would be alive to care for you, and he had the council's word that you would be treated as a hero. He gave his life, hoping to make you a hero. Naruto, he loved you. If anything, believe that. He was so happy when he heard he was going to have a child. He practically screamed it from the top of Hokage Mountain. He was going to train you to become a greater shinobi than he was. But life never goes how we plan. I'm sorry you have to learn it this way. But since your father's wishes weren't carried out, I have given him revenge on Konoha. All the jutsus he had ever created, all his notes, all his equipment, is with you now. Konoha will never be able to revive the Rasengan or the Hiraishin without you. I hope this can begin to heal the wounds you have. Someday, I hope to see your father's dream fulfilled. I hope to see you become a greater shinobi than your father. Until then, train hard and don't give up. Jiraiya. Naruto found himself smiling and crying as he read the letter again. He was the son of the Yondaime who had loved him. He knew his family, and they cared for him. They loved him, but life had taken them away. Suddenly, a weight lifted itself from him, as he now knew the truth of his heritage. He smiled as he looked at the sky. I'll make you proud of me. Mom, Dad, I'll fulfill your dream. I'll be the best there ever was. Sasuke Uchiha stood before the council of Konoha. He had recovered enough from his wounds to be discharged, and when he had been, the Anbu had escorted him to the Hokage's tower, where the council were waiting for him. Tsunade slowly stood to her feet. Sasuke Uchiha, you have been charged with deserting your village, abandoning your comrades, and even attacking a fellow shinobi of Konoha. How do you plead? Sasuke raised his head. I did all that, so do your worst. The ninja members looked at each other, shocked, but not altogether surprised at his arrogance. Tsunade nodded. The accused has admitted guilty to the charges. What is his punishment? One of the civilian council members stood up. By majority vote, have decided that Sasuke Uchiha's punishment is that he shall not be allowed to leave the village without supervision. Also, he will be watched by Anbu at all times. Since he has freely admitted his guilt, we believe that to be a sign of character and recommend that he be reinstated as a ninja of Konoha. There was an uproar as the council members divided along the same lines as before. Finally, Tsunade smashed a hand down on the table, silencing everyone. Is that so? Well, since this is a ninja matter, you have no say in what Sasuke's future as a shinobi will be. It is up to me if Sasuke will be able to be a shinobi again. Danzu smirked as he stood up. My dear Hokage-sama, I'm sure you could see it to let Sasuke become a shinobi again. After all, he may end up in the hands of one who will end up treating him as more of a weapon than a shinobi. Tsunade caught on to Danzu's hinted threat. If Sasuke wasn't made a ninja, Danzu would take him away and turn him into a weapon, one that he would control. Tsunade sighed as she sat back down. Fine, Sasuke, if you will pledge an oath of loyalty to Konoha, you will be reinstated as a genin. However, you will be placed by yourself and taught by ninja of my choosing. Sasuke stood there for several seconds before speaking. I'll agree to these terms on two conditions. I'll remain loyal to Konoha if I'm taught every jutsu this village can offer me, and if at the end of my training, the banishment of Naruto Uzumaki is lifted. There was quite a stir amongst the council. The ninjas looked at each other with confusion and hope in their eyes. The civilian and Denozu were bewildered and scared. Tsunade raised an eyebrow. Any reason to your last condition? Naruto somehow beat me at the Valley of the End. Even with his curse mark at level 2, he beat me. When my training is done, I want to fight him. If I can beat him, especially if he uses his full power, then I know I will be strong enough to complete my goal. Understanding dawned in everyone's eyes. They looked at each other, speaking in hushed tones. Tsunade looked down at the table, thinking, if I agree, Naruto can come back. But if I do, then he'll just come back to be beaten. It's a tough call. Maybe he will be strong enough to hold his own still. Danza had different thoughts. It doesn't matter. Naruto will be dead before long out there. I believe these conditions to be acceptable. Tsunade sighed and nodded. Agreed. Upon completion of Sasuke's training, Naruto Uzumaki's banishment will be lifted. Danza smiled as he turned to the Toad Sannin, who was standing behind Tsunade. Jiraiya-sama, I believe you might be of some assistance here. I happen to know that you have the jutsus of the late Yondaime Hokage. He was your student after all. If you would please hand them over to Sasuke, I'm sure he could put them to better use. Tsunade was about to protest when Jiraiya placed a hand on her shoulder. He smiled at Danzu. Unfortunately, your information is dated. I had them until today. They have been passed on to one who truly deserves those jutsus, since his father did create them. Danza's smile fell. What? Minato Namikaze had a son? Who? It doesn't matter, as he is no longer part of the village. At this, everyone began to realize what he meant. One of the civilians shot out of his seat. You lie. That demon scum couldn't possibly be the Yondame's son. You know, the last people to say that painted it on his apartment wall. They and the landlord of the apartment complex were arrested and imprisoned for life. After Anko Mitarashi was done with them, she pulled out a file. The Sandame was waiting until Naruto was 16 to reveal this. But since Naruto was banished, all the rules and laws are null and void. This is the birth certificate and DNA test proving Naruto's lineage. Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki were his parents. She smirked at the stunned faces on half the council. You all just screwed up big time. Naruto spent a dreamless sleep before awakening at dawn. He changed into a pair of khaki shorts and a blue shirt he had bought at a civilian store before he had left. After packing up, he shouldered his pack and continued on his way. It was mid-morning, and the town could be seen in the distance. But Naruto felt that something was wrong. In the woods around him, he felt like someone was watching him. He suddenly turned around, but there wasn't anyone there. Shrugging, he turned back around, only to see two kunai flash out and strike the ground. Each had a light bomb on them, which exploded in his face. He cried out, shielding his eyes. Suddenly, a fist smashed into his stomach. He was smashed against a tree, and chakra wires held him to it. As the light faded and his eyes adjusted, Naruto saw two Odo ninjas standing in front of him. That was easier than expected. Orochimaru-sama will be pleased. Naruto started struggling and cursing. One of the ninjas smacked him upside the head. Shut up. You've messed with our master's plans for the last time. Knock him out, and let's get going. The first ninja approached, only to suddenly get yanked in the air. There was a vine wrapped around one of his legs. He dangled upside down as two branches from one of the trees reached out and started smacking him across the face. The other ninja whirled around to see a man casually leaning against a tree. He looked like a regular civilian, wearing a pair of dusty jeans and a green t-shirt. His blue eyes watched the Odo ninja being beaten up as he ran a hand through his messy brown hair. He smiled as he turned to the other ninja. Sorry about your friend there. Want me to put him down? With a nod, the tree stopped smacking the now heavily bruised ninja, and the vine whipped him around, smashing him into the ground, knocking him out. With a shout, the second ninja threw a kunai at the stranger. He barely moved to one side, catching the kunai. He looked at it for a second, then tossed it over his shoulder. Guess you want to play, huh? Then let's play. The man suddenly began focusing his chakra. Suddenly, it seemed like the branches of the trees and the dirt beneath him converged on the man, covering him. When it receded, the man was now wearing a type of armor. He had on a breastplate, bracers, and greaves, shin guards like Anko, while the rest of him was covered in chainmail. A shinobi-style helmet, with the kanji for nature, now covered his head. He adopted a fighting style that looked loose and sloppy. The Odo ninja smirked. That fancy armor isn't going to help you. Earth style, earth entrapment. The ground below the stranger began to open, but suddenly he was gone. The Odo ninja looked around, only to be tapped on the shoulder. He whirled to see the man standing there. Miss me? Then he reared back and punched him, before disappearing again, reappearing to kick the ninja in the stomach. Naruto watched in amazement. This guy has to be as fast as Bushiboru's, even with all that armor he's wearing. But it doesn't look like his hits do much damage. Indeed, the stranger's hits seemed fairly weak. The Odo ninja barely seemed fazed by the hits themselves, but the speed of the attacks was alarming. Finally, the ninja managed to finish some hand signs. Earth style, sonic quake. He slammed his fists into the ground, and the stranger was caught by it and crashed into a tree, only to explode into a shower of leaves and dirt. Both the ninja and Naruto looked at it in amazement. What was that? That was my favorite jutsu, the nature clone. The Odo ninja whirled to see the man standing there, unhurt. Suddenly, there was a burst of chakra to his right arm. A round shield, roughly the size of a wheel, appeared on his arm. He smirked behind his mask, before channeling more chakra into the shield. A pair of blades grew out of the front of the shield, forming a pair of pincers. The man suddenly disappeared with his speed, only to reappear in front of the Odo ninja. He rammed his shield against the Odo ninja's neck, slamming him into a tree. The blades pierced the tree on either side, trapping the Odo ninja there. The strange warrior leaned closer to his trapped opponent. "Say goodnight." A branch of the tree whipped down and struck the ninja on the head, knocking him out. The warrior nodded at the tree, before retracting the blades, and then the shield. With a poof, his arm dissipated back into the ground and air, returning to its previous state as dirt and leaves. The stranger turned to Naruto, smiling. "Hey there, I saw you were in trouble, and thought you could use a hand. Here, let me get those wires for you." He picked up a kunai and cut the wires, freeing Naruto. Naruto slowly stood up, eyeing the stranger. "Thanks. No problem. Name's Rin Piku Uzumaki. Nice to meet you." He held out a hand, but Naruto just stared at him in amazement. Did you say Uzumaki?" Yeah, I did. That is my last name, after my father." Naruto suddenly smiled. "My name's Uzumaki too. I'm Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze." The man looked startled. "What? Yeah. My mom was Kushina Uzumaki. That's my aunt." "Wait, was?" Naruto looked down, his happy smile disappearing. "She died, bringing me into this world." Aren sighed. "I'm sorry to hear that. I wanted to meet her, seeing as she was my only living family." Naruto looked up at him. "You mean, you and me? I think we are the only Uzumakis left. But you said Namikaze. That your dad's name?" Naruto nodded. "My dad was Minato Namikaze. He died shortly after I was born." "Wait, your dad was the guy who beat Kyuubi? What did he do with him?" "He couldn't kill him, so what did he do?" Naruto became uneasy, and Rin picked up on it. "Oh, he didn't. He sealed Kyuubi in you?" Naruto nodded, and Rin shook his head. "That had to suck. No parents, and having Kyuubi bug you night and day. I guess we have a couple things in common." "Huh?" Aren sat down against a tree and motioned to Naruto to do the same. "Let me tell you my story. From what I understand, my dad, who would have been your uncle Tanryoku, left Yuzu when he was young. He wandered the world a bit, before finding himself lost in the middle of an unknown country beyond the borders of Suna. While he was out there, he collapsed from exhaustion. When he awoke, he found himself being cared for by a beautiful woman named Asahana Piku. She had found him and brought him back to her tribe's home. She nursed him back to health. They fell in love. You can guess the rest. Well, I was born about 14 years ago, and— Wait, how can you be 14? You look like an adult." Aren stiffened slightly and became serious for the first time. "It's something I don't like talking about. Let's just say I ran into a freak accident." "Okay?" Naruto nodded, his curiosity piqued. Aren went on. "So anyways, I was born and my parents started training me in their various styles. The Pika tribe are different than normal ninjas because we use nature chakra. We can't perform jutsus that don't have to do with nature, but we can do a lot more with the elements than a normal shinobi. You saw what I did, right?" Naruto nodded. "Well, besides that, and the awesome armor, the Piku were also known as the creators of animal summonings. Because of our affinity to nature, Piku were the first to be able to summon animals. But some of the contracts leaked out, which is how other shinobi can summon animals." Naruto nodded. "I actually have signed the toad summoning." "Really? They're a lot of fun, but maybe I can help you back those up with a summoning contract with more firepower. I'm surprised Kyuubi didn't give you the fox contract. We're not on the best of terms." "Right. Well, moving along. About 6 years ago, a terrible plague struck the Piku. They couldn't cure it, and so, one by one, they died. My father took me and my mother to escape it, but not fast enough. She died of the illness too. My father, well, he was pretty upset. He took me back to Yuzu, only to find it destroyed. That was the final straw for him. He told me that I needed to go wander the land, and someday bring the Uzumaki clan back. Then he headed straight for IWA. I heard rumors he actually assassinated the Tsukage before taking his own life." Naruto's eyes widened. "How can you just talk like it's no big deal? Because if I dwell too much on it, it would just tear me up. You have to move on and look at the good things in life. Like all this beauty and life around us." He spread his arms to indicate all the trees around him. There's no way to despair when there is so much life out here to enjoy. He smiled before turning to Naruto. So, I've been wandering around the world, had my little accident, and then I find you. So, what's your story? Naruto sighed before relating his own tale. About the QB being sealed in him, about the years of loneliness, about training to be a ninja and to be Hokage, about his friends, his adventures, and finally, about his banishment. When he stopped, Aren whistled. That was heartbreaking. But now you have a cousin, so life is better, right? Naruto nodded. You know, you're weird and proud of it. Now, about what I said about us being similar? Yeah. Well, guess what? I'm a Jinchuriki, just like you. Naruto looked at him, then burst out laughing. You a Jinchuriki? Well, not the same, but yeah. This wasn't my freak accident, but it led to it. See, after me and my dad separated, I was wandering down near Suna for a bit. Well, one day, I found this person who was using these jutsus to torture this creature. I didn't see it properly until I stopped the guy. When I began to examine it, I found it was some type of weird hybrid between a cheetah and a wolf. Next thing I know, it touches me with its snout, and I pass out. Well, that incident caused my freaky accident, which then led to my older body, and then I woke up. The creature was gone, until I heard it talk to me in my head. Apparently, it was a type of lesser demon, not in the same class as the tailed Biju. That guy had pretty much mortally wounded it, and it saved itself by sealing itself in me. He apologized and gave me incredible speed. See, he wasn't as strong as the tailed Biju are, but he's a lot faster than they are. Well, I couldn't blame him for wanting to live, now could I? So, we got to know each other, and we're the best of buds. So, me and you are Jinchuriki brothers. Aren suddenly hugged Naruto, who was finding himself confused. This guy was twice as old as he was, but acted like he was a teenager. He's either a nut job or just happy to find some family. Naruto decided it was the latter and hugged his cousin. Somehow, he couldn't help but trust him. When they pulled apart, Aren smiled. So, what were you planning on doing? Thought I might see some sights. But you know where Yuzu is, right? Yeah, well, I want to go there. I want to see my mother's old home. Aren nodded. Right. We'll leave first thing in the morning. Oh, and I think I might start training you in a few things. If these Akatsuki guys are after you, I'll need to make you as strong as possible. But for now, let's see what's happening in the town over there. With that, Aren leapt up and helped Naruto gather his pack. With that, he started towards the nearby town. Naruto followed, wondering what he was getting himself into. He loved the idea of having actual family and the training. But this accident Aren had mentioned, Naruto wondered what that was about, and what could it have been to age him 10 extra years. With a shrug, he followed Aren, ready for new adventures. Tsunade sat at her desk, busily filling out the dread of Kages and leaders everywhere. Paperwork. The horror that never ended. But Tsunade had much more on her mind. The fact that Sasuke had gotten off with little punishment, coupled with him being given access to almost every unguarded jutsu the village had, was causing strife in the village. Many of the shinobi who had seen Naruto in action and had heard of his fight against Gaara were livid that he had been banished, but a traitor was merely scolded. Many were threatening to leave, and a few had actually purposely failed simple missions to help the civilians. The civilians in turn were disgusted at the treacherous actions and thoughts of some of their shinobi. Each day, new complaints came in, and Tsunade was the one who was forced to deal with them. Tensions were high elsewhere. After receiving a report from Gaara, Sun became even colder towards Konoha. The recent alliance was still there, but Suna wasn't happy with it. They were now even less happy that the ninja responsible for the positive change in the man who would one day be Kazekage. Also, Snow/Spring Country, which so recently owed Naruto much as well, had begun to withdraw their support of Konoha, which had been given freely after Naruto had saved their princess, Koyuki Kazahana. Also, traders from Wave Country were becoming fewer, and those who did come were charging more than regular prices, or sometimes refusing to sell or buy at all to certain people. It was causing her much grief as Hokage. Right now, she longed to go out, smash a whole bunch of buildings down, hurt Danzu and the civilian council as much as possible before leaving to parts unknown. But she couldn't. She had taken this job to protect and serve Konoha. If she acted in such a fashion, she would disgrace the Hokages before her and the job forever. And when Naruto came back, He would probably want a job, not shamed by the actions of the previous employee. She sighed as she filled out another form to supply more iron to the smiths, so they could forge more weapons. Suddenly, a small black paperweight glowed as a seal appeared on it. Suddenly, a small orange and black frog pooped out, wearing a dark blue vest. Hiya, Bachan. I'm Gamakichi, Naruto's personal mail service. How you doing? Tsunade looked at the toad for a moment and smiled. The toad reminded her of Naruto. I'm good. I'm actually surprised Naruto sent me a message so quick. Yeah, well, he had something important he had to tell you. Here. Gamakichi reached up to his back, opening the leather pouch up there. He pulled out a thick scroll. I've got another one for a Hinata Hyuga. You know where I can find her? Tsunade smiled before taking both scrolls. I'll give it to her. It must have been really important if Naruto already sent her a letter as well. Gamakichi nodded. Oh, it's important all right. The kid ran into a good buddy of mine and all the other summonings. He wrote about him in the letter. Oh, and Naruto wanted me to tell you to start looking you age. Bye. Before the now furious and vein-throbbing Tsunade could smash the toad with a fist, he reared back her head and shouted, "Hey, are you?" Oh. Sasuke heard the yell, but paid it no mind. Currently, with his AMBU escort, he was making his way through to the Uchiha district from the General Shinobi was carrying a dozen or so scrolls on jutsus. As he walked, he noticed how many people were now smiling at him, and a few cheered and bowed. That wasn't unusual, except that they were more vocal about it. What was unusual was that every so often, a person would glare at him and muttered traitor under their breath. Almost all the shinobi did this, but to find civilians too was unnerving. Sasuke just shook his head. He approached the gate to the Uchiha district, only to stop dead at what he saw. The gate was in shambles, and someone had painted traitor and scum all over the walls. A few of the Uchiha fan symbols were painted over with a symbol of a fox head. And in the middle of all these, someone had painted a Naruto face, giving his fox grin. Sasuke felt a slow anger boil through him. To view him as a traitor, he could stand that. But no one had a right to desecrate his clan's home. In a rage, he stormed through the gate, through the empty streets, and to his home. When he rounded the wall around his house, he stopped, seeing Danzu and a pale-skinned, almost femininely dressed ninja. A wakizashi hilt peered over his right shoulder. Sasuke looked at the two of them. "Danzu-sama, can I help you?" he asked, barely controlling his rage at what had been done to his clan's home. "It is I who wish to help you. I want to make you strong, so you can defeat Naruto Uzumaki." "Don't you mean Namikaze?" Danzu frowned. "Even if Tsunade-san is correct, I refuse to acknowledge him as such. It would be a disgrace to the Yondaime to do so. But that is beside the point. I have a few jutsus I think could help you. These you won't find in a shinobi library." Sasuke tilted high head, showing his interest. "Really? Well, why don't we go inside and talk?" As he led them inside, Sasuke smirked internally. "Perfect. If they can give me power, I can easily defeat Naruto and kill him. Then I'll have the power of the Manjikyu Sharingan to kill Itachi with. Yes, you fool. I'll help you train. Then I'll turn you over to Orochimaru, and he'll take you over. Then I will rule over Konoha, as I should. I'll make the village strong, and then I'll conquer the other nations." Hayashi Hyuga watched in amazement as his eldest daughter struck the training dummy in the dojo of the Hyuga estate. He had walked by to find her in there practicing. She had been working for almost 3 hours now and showed no signs of relenting. Does this have to do with Naruto? She's pushing herself hard. Harder than anyone else in the clan. A branch member approached, carrying a scroll. He bowed to Hayashi. "Hayashi-sama, this scroll just arrived from the Hokage's office. It is for Hinata-sama." Hayashi nodded and took the scroll before dismissing the servant. He approached Hinata, who stepped back and prepared for her next set of attacks. "Enough. You'll cripple yourself training this hard." He gaped in amazement as Hinata looked up at him. There was a fire of determination which he had never seen before. Slowly, he held out the scroll. "This came from the Hokage's office. It is for you." "Thank you, Odu." She bowed as she took the scroll, then opened it up. As she began to read, her face immediately lit up. Hayashi smiled, knowing this could only mean one thing. "It's from Naruto, I presume?" "Yes, Odu. He is well." She continued to read, and then let out a happy laugh. He has found a family member. Hayashi's eyes widened, and he came around behind her. He read the letter, which started with Naruto saying he was all right, that he had survived an attack from Oto ninjas, asking how she was, saying how much he already missed her. Then he started going on about a cousin who had helped him fight the ninjas. He described his cousin and how his cousin was going to train him. Then he finished with saying again how much he missed her and had written love, only to scratch it out, and just wrote Naruto. Hayashi smiled as he saw the happy look on his daughter's face. He knew that she was happy that Naruto wasn't alone and apparently had not only found family, but a strong ninja to protect him. He placed a hand on her shoulder, and she looked up at him. This is good news indeed. He is doing well. You'll have to train hard, though, if you want to make him proud when he comes back. He had informed Hinata of what had transpired in the council meeting, about Naruto's true lineage, and how he would eventually come back. He left out the part involving Sasuke, as he didn't want to upset Hinata. She smiled and turned back to the training dummies, only to be stopped by her father's hand still on her shoulder. You have trained enough for now. Rest, eat something, then resume your training. Perhaps me and you could spar later, if I have the time. Hinata bowed her head. Yes, Odo. I would like that. Hayashi smiled as he left. He entered his study and looked at one of the pictures on the desk. It showed himself, Minato, and their wives, both of whom were pregnant. Hayashi smiled as the memories washed over him. Minato, I think you would be proud of your son. Sakura waited for Tsunade in the special room that the medic Sannin would train her in. Tsunade had taken Sakura on as her apprentice, but it hadn't been easy to convince her to do so. Sakura was determined that she would no longer be such a weak kunoichi. She wanted to be strong, so that she could be like Naruto. He never gave up. He kept his promises, even when it almost killed him. Out of the three of us, he really was the strongest. And that's what I want to be. Strong, so I'm not influenced by a mere crush or forced to rely on others all the time. I want to be able to protect others too, just like Naruto, and her thoughts trailed away as her mind became confused on its thoughts about Sasuke. Tsunade entered, having mostly calmed down from her burst of anger at Naruto. She smiled at Sakura. I have something that might interest you. Naruto wrote me a letter. He's found a cousin. Sakura's eyes widened. What? Yeah. Turns out his uncle had a kid, and now they've met up. They're going to be traveling together, training and such. Sakura suddenly smiled. That's great. That means he'll be safe out there. Tsunade nodded, then became serious. Right? Enough talk. Time to get to work. Sakura snapped to attention as Tsunade began to teach her medical ninjutsu. Naruto and Eren began heading northward through the land of fire and towards Waterfall Country. After he had settled down from his hype about finding a lost cousin, Naruto had learned a few more things about Eren. For one, he was never serious unless someone died. Another was he never killed. A third was the name of his Biju, Hayashirkan Fastfong. Kyubi had snorted in disgust, only to have Naruto yell for the fox to shut up. As they walked, Naruto started asking questions about his training and Eren's skills. So, this nature chakra, is it something I can learn? Nope. Sorry, but you need to be trained almost as soon as you can walk. The first thing, when your mind is still open and innocent, is to be trained to sense the chakra in everything. Eren knelt and ran his hands through the grass. The energy running through the grass. The energy flowing through those birds, through the trees. There's chakra in everything, but you must be trained to recognize it. That's why I can't train you to use nature chakra. So, what will you train me in? Well, there are a few summoning contracts I want you to see. Maybe some will take to you. And while I can't train you in nature chakra, I can train you in elemental jutsus. First, your affinities. Eren touched Naruto's head and closed his eyes. He began to chant, and then suddenly opened his eyes. You're mainly wind, with lightning as a secondary. Thanks to Kyubi, if you should unlock the fox's power, you'll use all the elements. But wind and lightning will be your strongest. How do you know? Was that some freaky element detecting jutsu? Nah, I just sensed them when I first ran into you. That whole bit was to mess with you. Naruto face planted, as Eren chuckled while moving on. Naruto picked himself up and quickly caught up. Well, what else? Swords. I may not carry one, but my dad made sure I was a blade master, just like all Uzumakis. So, when we get you a decent blade, I'll start training you. Naruto nodded. Well, I do have some other jutsus here. Maybe you can help me with them? Eren nodded. Sure. But first things first. We need to up your strength and speed. With a single hand sign, rocks erupted from the ground and secured themselves over Naruto's body like a suit of armor. He suddenly found it was hard to move. What is this? Besides protection, that will act as weights until I can get a proper set. When you start to get used to move with all that on, let me know, and we'll up the amount. Naruto sighed under his breath. Why do I feel like being like Shikamaru and saying troublesome? At that moment, a lazy Chunin genius sneezed, before going back to contemplating his next move against his sensei. He moved a night piece into position. Game. Naruto eventually was able to move at a respectable pace, but the weights kept him below a jog. Eren smiled before revealing his own weights. He was carrying 100 pounds on each arm and leg and 200 on his chest under his shirt. I was wearing these during the fight yesterday. Pretty sweet, huh? Naruto just stared at him in disbelief, before lowering his head to concentrate on moving his legs. For the next week, they continued on their trip. Each day, Eren would have Naruto practice basic and advanced chakra control exercises and showed him a few Konoha didn't have. Naruto slowly adjusted to the weight until he could break into a jog, but anything beyond that was still unattainable. At night, Naruto began to pore over the scrolls he had been given by Anko and Jiraiya. Jiraiya's scroll contained not just the Rasengan and Hiraishin, plus several of the tri-pronged kunai for it, but notes on a Rasengan with the element combined. Also, there were some techniques Jiraiya had learned, and a few others he had encountered and recorded. Naruto wanted to work on the Hiraishin until Eren bopped him on the head and told him to start simple. Better to have many medium jutsus than have only one high-ranked jutsu. So, Naruto was working on element control and a jutsu that would double his current striking speed in taijutsu, but would lower the attack power by half. It would come in handy until his speed was high enough up. Naruto grumbled at his tenant. You know, you could help. After all, the better chance I have of surviving, the better chance you have. This works both ways, Brad. You don't want to hang out with me, I don't help you, and then you die when I get taken out. This is for your good as much as mine, Furball. Jiraiya are fine, but only if you call me QB. Fine. Then you can call me Naruto, or Kid, or whatever along those lines. Deal? Deal. With that, the QB immediately began listing off exactly what Naruto needed to do to pull the jutsu off faster. That was the way Naruto's life went. Each day was spent getting used to the weights and practicing chakra control. Each night, he trained his jutsus. By the end of the second week, when they were on the border of Waterfall and what had been Yuzu, Naruto had 7 more jutsus under his belt, including a wind and lightning jutsu. They stopped at the border, and Eren sighed. This is where the real fun begins. Yuzu shared a border with IWA near the eastern tip at the coast. When IWA took out Yuzu, they took over the land and added it to their own. So, we need to sneak into Yuzu and sneak out when we're ready. He turned to Naruto, who now had almost 600 pounds of earth on him. Keep your eyes and other senses open. IWA shinobi have no love for Konoha, Yuzu, or anyone for that matter. Well, let's go. They quietly slipped past the border and into IWA. They made their way through the countryside, avoiding most towns and villages, until they came to a depression in the landscape. Down on the valley floor, Naruto sighted his mother's home for the first time. At one time, it would have seemed like a peaceful place. The village was backed against the coast, with a wall surrounding it. It would have been small, only about as big as a regular civilian village. Now ruins stood where the walls and buildings had been. There was the remains of a dock and even a shipwreck. Naruto shook his head and slowly headed down, Eren right behind him. They passed through the gap in the ruined wall that had once been the gate. Naruto glanced around. One time, these buildings had been bustling with people and business. Children would have run through the streets, laughing happily. Now, the buildings were nothing but falling stone and broken timbers. The streets were littered with debris, desolate except for the occasional bird or rat. A chilling wind suddenly blew over them as a cloud blotted out the sun. Naruto could almost feel the despair hanging over the ruined village. It feels horrible, he whispered. Suddenly, A ray of light broke through the clouds and illuminated one spot. Naruto felt drawn to it. Eren followed at a distance. Naruto found himself in front of what might have been a clan estate. There was a symbol on a fallen board. As Naruto knelt to examine it, Eren looked over his shoulder. It was the red swirl that was on the back of the flak jackets worn by the Chunin and Jounin of Konoha. But over were crossed katanas. That's our clan symbol. The symbol of the Uzumaki. Naruto looked up. So, this was her home. He slowly entered, picking his way through the debris. He came to an area that was mostly clear, except for what looked like destroyed weapon racks. He found several broken katanas and other weapons. As he turned, he saw where the sun ray had landed. A glint of gold caught his attention, and he slowly approached. He found the hilt of a katana sticking out of a pile of debris. As he cleared it all away, Eren came over. "What did you find?" Naruto didn't answer, as he was staring at his discovery. It was a pair of katanas. One was a little over 3 feet and was sheathed in a simple black scabbard, treated with a finish and polished to shine. The hilt was also mostly plain, wrapped in black cloth with a black hilt guard. It was a standard shinobi katana. The other sword, the one that had gotten Naruto's attention, was different. This sword was longer, 3 feet and 9 inches. The scabbard was wood, painted a wine-red color, and treated with a high polish finish. The hilt was wrapped in red and black cloth, and one side covered a golden dragon emblem. About 4 inches above the pommel, there was an etched metal band. Below, it was another golden dragon emblem. The hilt guard was black, with gold symbols on either side of it. The side of the hilt had a number of birds over a mountain range. The other side had a golden dragon wrapped halfway around the hilt guard. Naruto slowly picked the sword up and, with a gentle tug, unsheathed it. The blade was long, narrow, and curved. Along one side, the name of the blade was etched, Genulfuito, the blade of Yuzu's legacy. Naruto said softly. He turned to Eren. "This blade, it's one of the last heirlooms of the clan." Eren nodded. "Makes sense. And it makes sense that you should wield it." Naruto looked at him, then at the blade. He slowly touched the end where the second dragon emblem was. With a small tug, he revealed a short knife sheathed in the end of the blade. He looked it over, then sheathed the dagger, then the katana. He reached out, took the other sword, and secured it to his back under his pack. He looked at the red sword before securing it to his belt. Slowly, he looked around. This could have been my home. This could have been somewhere I visited to see my grandparents. But QB and IWA took those chances away from me. Slowly, he drew the red sword and cut his palm on it. "I swear upon my blood, and this sword, I will never dishonor our family's name." Eren nodded as Naruto cleaned the blade and sheathed it. They dug through the wreckage and came out with a set of training weights, which Naruto donned. It was less than he had before, but Eren promised they would buy more at the first shop in Waterfall. Slowly, Eren turned to leave, only to see Naruto perform his shadow clone jutsu. The clones immediately began to scrounge through the wreckage, bringing various pieces together. After they had gathered a certain amount, they began to construct something. After an hour, they stepped back. It was a memorial, with the plank of the Uzumaki symbol on it. Naruto slowly bowed his head before turning to Eren. "I'm ready, sensei." "Hey, I'm your cousin. Besides, you're going to be teaching me some things too." Naruto smiled. "Really? Like what?" "Well, how about this thing you call ramen?" With a laugh, the two trudged away, leaving their family's home behind. As they reached the top of the hill, Naruto took one last look. He slowly reached into his pocket and pulled out his mother's headband. He looked at it, then tied it to his forehead. He looked back as the wind began to whip the long cloth tails from the knot. The wind blew a few tears from his face before he turned and headed off. The Tsuchikage couldn't believe the report he had been given. His ninjas had discovered a man who had amazing powers they had never seen. He had easily slain 4 Chunin without breaking a sweat. Now he was planning to meet this man and possibly gain him as a powerful asset to IWA. There was a knock on the door, and the Tsuchikage stood to his feet. "Come in." The door opened, and a massive man entered. He was easily over 6 feet, almost 7. He was muscular. That much was certain from the bulges in his black leather clothing. He wore a long-sleeved leather tunic, pants, and fingerless gloves. A dark red cloak with gold design hung from his shoulders. But what caught Sachikid's attention was the man's skin and face. His skin was a dark gray-green. His eyes were yellow, almost golden. He had red hair, done in a series of rolls on his head. The man's face was intelligent, but he gave an air of cruelty. Sachikid indicated the seat opposite his desk. The man came and sat down. "I'm honored that you agreed to meet with me. The pleasure is mine." The man's voice was deep and rough. He looked around in interest. The Kage of IWA nodded as he sat down. "You have amazing powers, or so I'm told. Would you perhaps consider putting them to use?" "How so?" "Well, we could use your help here. If you would like, I would make you a jounin of this village and give you anything you wanted." The man considered this offer. It actually fit into his plans. "Well, I will agree on one condition. I'm looking for something. If you can assist me in this and allow me to leave to hunt down clues, then I'll gladly offer you my services." Sachikid slowly nodded. "Then we have a deal." He shook the man's hand. "Welcome to IWA. May I ask for your name?" The man smiled, an evil smile that almost sucked the light from the room. "Ganondorf. My name is Ganondorf." That's it for today, guys. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you do, please leave a like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget to check out author of this story. Thanks for watching. Take care.